So you're looking at it, but not the cameras.
We'll be looking at the cameras, thus we'll be looking at this too.
But the cameras won't be looking at it at all.
For 9/11.
But they won't be looking at it if it's on the
Committee for
side either.
9/11
Right,
inquiry.
on the side.
We want it in the video, right?
Do you?
I think so.
See?
You changed your mind.
Okay, so gentlemen, the live stream has begun
Here,
because it's 1 o'clock. So who will speak first? Richard, will you speak first?
Not sure how this is going to go today.
Not
But
sure.
we're quite excited about the opportunity to get the evidence into the record in discovery. I mean, for the first time, really. This is amazing, and it's all the work of the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, Dave Meiswinkle, Mick Harrison, and all the other great lawyers there. They have been relentless.
What we did, Jason, Richard, the founder of Architects and Engineers, they assembled and put together for the past 10 years an amazing array of scientific forensic evidence that conclusively shows that the World Trade Center towers came down through pre-planted explosives, controlled demolition bombs, and that was packaged by the Lawyers Committee and put into the grand jury petition, which was up and down in New York City in the Southern District. And it's our understanding that a grand jury is being convened or has been convened to consider that evidence for the first time. In addition, we've submitted to them a supplement. It's called People with Material Information. And there's a supplement that is public, and there's a supplement that's secret, being that's the secret one is the one that we want them to consider in depth. So we're here today in a new action. This is an historical action, and it's really opening up the process in a way that hasn't been before. We've transcended now New York City to an extent. And what we're doing is a lawsuit under the Administrative Procedure Act and the Federal Mandamus Act. And what it does, it calls for declaratory relief and an injunctive relief. And what that means is we want the judge or the courts to decide that the evidence that we're putting forth or the cause of action is a legitimate cause of action, and we want them to order the FBI to do certain things. Now, what the FBI has to do is under the 9/11 Review Commission, they were supposed to assess any evidence that was available to them that relates back to the crimes in any way of 9/11 crimes, and they were supposed to make an assessment and eventually present that to the 9/11 Review Commission, and that this is evidence that was not considered by the original 9/11 Commission. And what we've done now, we have a 7-count complaint. The first count has to do with the World Trade Center pre-planted explosive evidence. That's which is in the original petition for a grand jury. But it has evidence of what we call the high fivers, or the FBI calls, and these were people in New Jersey that were filming the event, the crime as it went down, and were eventually arrested in New Jersey. And there are large files that the FBI have on that the 9/11 investigation or the original 9/11 committee did not know about. So, in other words, the FBI had a responsibility to assess this information and to give it to the commission to consider it. And it's a legislative mandate. It's not something arbitrary. It's something that Congress is involved with, and they want that report. They want to be reported to also. In addition, it has a count having to do with destruction of evidence, because that's our understanding. Just when this was happening, when there was a mandate to do this assessment, the pictures may have been destroyed. All right, so we want an accounting of there. There's also an account there having to do with the Saudi financing. There is a civil litigation now that's discovered 3 tranches of evidence, which seems like a voluminous evidence that was never considered by the original 9/11 Commission. There is evidence having to do with cameras in the Pentagon, not too far from where we stand now. A lot of people don't know there were cameras there that had to have recordings, and those recordings have never, to our knowledge, have never been made public. There's a section on plane parts. There's the plane parts, individual parts, often many of them have serial numbers. And we want to have disclosed those serial numbers and those plane parts in a process of an assessment made by the FBI. What's the import of that? Because that would identify what hit the Pentagon. If a plane hit the Pentagon, it would tell us what plane hit the Pentagon through the serial numbers. The same with in New York, and the same in Shanksville.
Now, David, let me just ask you this, because I think people are wondering. You've got the action that's happening in the Southern District of New York. That's to open a grand jury to investigate all the evidence. This is a new matter compelling the FBI to actually investigate. Give us just the specifics again, briefly. What's different and
What's very significant, this is a lawsuit. What's happening in New York is we have petitioned the government to do what they're supposed to do. This is we're actually suing the FBI and the Department of Justice for failure to do what they're supposed to do. And we're asking the court to rule that yes, they had an obligation to assess this evidence. They had an obligation to present it to the 9/11 Review Commission and to Congress. And this is evidence that was never considered by the original 9/11 Commission that convened in 2002 and then ended in 2004.
And so do you feel that there's a better chance for this to compel the FBI to act, or how do you feel about what's happening today?
Yeah, I feel that it's a very strong action. Another part of the complaint had to do with cell phone communications. A lot of people don't realize that the whole cell phone communication interpretation changed from cell phones earlier on to air phones later on, and that became out in the Meiswinkle trial, where a very important call from Barbara Olson, the Solicitor General's wife, the FBI said it was never really made. And he said he got 4 calls from her. So this is information that was never considered by the original 9/11 Commission. So we want an assessment, which Congress is supposed to do, and say, what happened here? Why has this changed? Why did we go from cell phones to air phones? Why is this call never happened? So that's in part. So the drama here, or the significance, is that it opens up the case. As you can see, plane parts connect Shanksville, New York City, and the Pentagon. What planes actually were down there? If you look at what happened in Shanksville, what plane parts it was nothing hardly there. Of course, they did find things. We want to make sure that was Flight 93 there. In the Pentagon, we want to make sure it was American Flight 77. In the Twin Towers, we want to make sure it was American Flight 11 and United Flight 175. All right, so we're talking about a confirmation in the sense the FBI makes an assessment. Here's a list of the plane parts. We have them. The public's never seen them, and Congress has never seen them, and wants to have the report, etc. And certainly, most importantly, the 9/11 Commission, when they made their determination, weren't aware of it. So this is new information between 2004 to 2014 that the FBI was aware of, and they've been ordered now to make an assessment of that and report to the 9/11 Review Commission and to Congress this information that was never considered originally. What it does is it opens up everything. It's a brand new ballgame if the judge allows the case to go on.
Now, let me ask you this. As we stand here on March 25th, 2019, it's just one day after Robert Mueller's released his report on the Russiagate findings, and he's found no collusion. So we now realize that Robert Mueller's been investigating for 2 years, no evidence. Of course, Robert Mueller was the FBI director starting September 4th, 2001. He also failed to properly investigate evidence in this matter. Do you feel that the outcome in the Russiagate investigation will have any kind of impact on what Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry is trying to do and what architects and engineers are trying to do?
Well, it's an interesting thought, and I really haven't thought about it because we've still been involved getting this out. Everything has to be considered in historical context. it really has to be. Even the fact that the grand jury is supposedly going on in New York right now as we talk, in the Southern District. Why did that happen now? We're talking about 19 years later. We're talking about most egregious, or 18 years later, most egregious crime that ever committed in the country. Why they're doing something now, who knows? But what we're saying here is this lawsuit, we're not depending on the U.S. Attorney to do his job. We're depending on hopefully the courts to order the FBI to do their job. So this is a declaratory action for injunctive relief. The injunction is the courts to say, do your job. The same with the petition up in New York. We're asking the U.S. Attorney. And everywhere we look with 9/11, it seems that there was a failure of very professional organizations not to do their job on that day. That particular day seemed like hardly anybody was doing their job.
Now, of course, on September 11th, 2001, Donald Trump was just a real estate developer and a New Yorker, but he did famously say that he expected there were bombs in the building. Do you think having Donald Trump as president has any impact on what you're trying to do with this?
Well, I think that Donald Trump, his initial assessment is a correct assessment. I mean, this is a man who builds skyscrapers. I mean, he's not, to that statement is more of an advantage than being a politician. If I'm a person that builds skyscrapers and I understand how they're built and I understand how they could come down and what it takes to bring them down. So his initial reaction was that. And so I think that's, it bodes better than if he had said something different, all right?
Right.
So I don't know the politics involved here, and certainly there is very powerful politics, and we're not saying who did what. We're saying in the grand jury, here's some of the facts. You tell us, you do the investigation, never an investigation. Here we are saying to the judge, these are facts. The FBI never did this, and if you agree with us, then order them to do it. And again, that's just to make an assessment of this important information, including the information that Richard Gage was involved with, and architects and engineers, all that valuable information that was at ground zero having to do with the collapse of those buildings or the destruction or explosion of those buildings.
Absolutely.